What's up, everyone? My name's Noctugal, and I know this is a bit of a belated video, but I figured I might as well get it down now rather than not at all. So this one took me a little bit of time, some things going on, but after looking after the image and watching some other people's videos on it, I just wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit and see if we could figure out what's going on in this image. So I kind of want to break this down into multiple segments. The first segment I want to break it down into is who is on Torrent in this image. Obviously, that horse is Torrent. I don't think that really is up for dispute or debate. Really, at this point, the only thing that's up for dispute or debate is who is on Torrent. As right now, it's kind of split with some people between miquella and Marika. Now, the way that works, though, is that most people are actually siding with it being miquella, or Trina, essentially. And the reason that seems to be is that not only the size of the body, but the hairstyle seems to very much so fit with what we do know about miquella. And based on those details, though, I agree that this is most likely miquella on the Torrent horse. And so with that being said, I think it's also important to mention the fact that there's clearly St. Trina's lilies all around miquella and Torrent in this image. Yeah, you can see some graves over across the way, and I do want to talk about that a little bit. However, I do want to talk more so about the fact that they seem to be surrounded by Trina's lilies. It makes me wonder if the lily is somehow a manifestation of miquella's current situation, asleep with dulled senses and looks to be themselves on the verge of withering away. And the reason I say this is because the description of St. Trina's lily describes them as being close to withering and dulled senses, preventing agitation. So it makes me wonder if somehow the flower and miquella's current situation are linked in some way, perhaps from being in this deep slumber the flowers have manifested. I also wanted to point out that these are clearly Trina's lilies and not miquella's lilies, once again lending to the gender confusion of this character, and once again implying miquella embodies both a male and female. Miquella clearly has some connections with spirits in the realm of the dead, perhaps the Helfen, considering miquella's current state, the description of Trina's lily, the Trina lily's appearance, which is quite ethereal, honestly. Though it does make me wonder if it's a Trina lily in this instance because this is perhaps the Trina persona that we are going to be interacting with or viewing in this DLC. I only say that, though, because of the presence of those flowers, and perhaps the Trina lilies are more ethereal to represent miquella in a more state near death. And after watching Avanti video, well, that's a mouthful, it does make me wonder if perhaps somehow miquella was a spirit caller. It would fit in line with the Erdtree, with there already being spirit caller snails there, as well as it being a place for essentially those who don't feel like they belong anywhere to go, and that could even embody spirits. Avanti in his video points out the 3 wolves statue standing around a kid in Fair Missoula, and how this could relate to him being a spirit caller or having some sort of connection to Far Missoula, though to me right now I'm not really sure if I see as clear of a connection there. Moreover, as I was mentioning earlier, miquella's gender is quite ambiguous throughout the game, and may have a similar situation to Marika, as miquella may have a male and female persona, and perhaps we are seeing the female persona here, or perhaps miquella is just extremely androgynous, and that could be why it's so difficult for people to tell. Because we also have to remember that miquella is essentially cursed with eternal youth, and with that eternal youth, you could argue that Trina/miquella has never really gone through puberty, and so it might be hard for people to discern whether or not there are a girl or a boy. With that being said, I also wonder if this eternal childhood that miquella is cursed with, and was cursed by another god, we can't forget, like an outer god, and perhaps this interference from another outer god is the reason for miquella's state of being, obviously the childhood, like the eternal childhood, as well as perhaps the androgynous state. Though it does make me wonder if this outer god, considering they are an outer god, is this an outer god that perhaps controls another realm of existence or reality? Perhaps this outer god has control over the Helfen or some other outer realm or spirit world or something along those lines, and obviously we don't have enough information to go off of. Though I don't think it would be that far-fetched, considering that we know that miquella was cursed alongside Melania by another outer god, and that miquella seems to be trapped in this eternal state of slumber, which could also relate to an interference by an outer god not wanting miquella to complete the Erdtree transformation. We can't forget that miquella's attempt to merge with the Erdtree was an attempt to create his own Erdtree, and in that effort, he wanted to break his curse of eternal childhood. So, perhaps the outer god that cursed him and his sister were displeased with his choice to break the curse. And perhaps through Moog, this outer god foiled miquella's plan. Though, with this speculation, it would have to mean that the Formless Mother is responsible for miquella's curse and dream state, and I'm not confident in that idea, though I do like to believe that there still is an outer god interfering with Marika's children. Alright, now just to pivot a bit, I do want to talk about where/when this is. So one of the common topics and questions is this a dream world? And I think that's very plausible. Simply based on the fact that we know that miquella is in a sort of slumber as we speak. Whether or not this dream world is a legitimate world that exists separate from the lands between, that I think is yet to be seen, and whether or not it's actually the Helfin or a realm controlled by another outer god is yet to be seen, though with a single image we don't really have much to go off of, though we do know that miquella and / Trina seems to be associated with like near-death experiences and sleep and all these things, and so it makes you wonder if it is some sort of dream world. And as I just mentioned, the Helfin. I'm not so sure this is the Helfin, but I could easily be wrong about that. It's difficult because there's an orange glow coming from what appears to simply just be the Erdtree. And based on what I myself have found concerning the Helfin, as well as what other people have found concerning the Helfin, such as Vati or Crunchy, everything seems to relate to the Helfin having a red color to it, and with a black steeple. And it makes me wonder, though, if that darker Erdtree in the background is meant to be the dark steeple of the Helfin, though I just don't see any red lamplight. Though, we could be wrong about that. We could be entirely wrong that there even is red light in the Helfin. Perhaps it's blue light, perhaps it's orange light, rather than like a more golden light. Perhaps it could be anything else. We don't really know. So this, while I am a little hesitant to say that it's the Helfin just simply based off this image, I also can't really say it's not the Helfin based off this image. I've also heard people saying that it can't be prior to the start of the game, nor can it be after an ending, as it would lock the players into a particular ending. However, FromSoftware DLC has been used in the past to provide a new ending, at the very least for Dark Souls 2, though I'm not entirely certain about the other games. And perhaps this image in the DLC could bring us a new ending, the famed 7th ending people have been trying to argue exists since the game was released last year. Perhaps the DLC will give us a new ending that allows us to side with miquella or save miquella, and this could certainly lend itself to the tree in the image possibly representing the Erdtree. This image itself could be representing a new ending that we have yet to see. I could also see how this image itself is in fact a red herring, and that all of the things in the image we will see will be in the DLC, though perhaps not all at once. It would not be surprising if there is never a scene in the DLC in which we actually see this exact image. And I think it's more likely that this is along the lines of a concept image that has components of what we can expect to see and encounter when the DLC does finally release, especially considering we don't have an official release date. So in my opinion, this image is likely inside the mind of miquella while being held captive by Moog, and the shadow of the Erdtree could again be a reference to miquella's Erdtree, or perhaps another tree symbolically in the shadow of the power of the Erdtree in Elden Ring. Now finally, I want to talk about what exactly is going on with the Erdtree in the background of this image. So, Shadow of the Erdtree could still be referencing the Helfin, as the steeple in the Helfin could be an inverse of the Erdtree, or the shadow to the glowing light that is the Erdtree. The Erdtree appears as two trees, with a darker one wrapping around the main stalk of the tree, which may suggest it's almost being strangled or sapped of power, either by the death roots of Godwyn or by the original Great Tree. The question really becomes, is this the black lampwood of the Helfin? And I suppose it could be. We don't entirely know what it's supposed to look like other than the fact that it seems to be somewhat of an inverse to the Erdtree. And perhaps what we see right here is the darker version of the Erdtree, the shadow of the Erdtree, the black lampwood of the Helfin. However, this could also actually be in the past depicting either Marika or miquella witnessing the Erdtree overtaking the Great Tree. Shadow is in the dark past of the Erdtree. And while I don't particularly enjoy this idea, it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, because when it comes to Shadow of the Erdtree, it could mean anything. As I said, Shadow could mean as in the dark past of the Erdtree. Perhaps we will actually see how the Erdtree was formed, how the lands between essentially became what we know them as. Perhaps see the lands between prior to the Shattering, or maybe even at the height of the Golden Order. Perhaps we maybe even will go back in time. We already know that time is something that they'd like to play around with a little bit in these fromsoftware games. We even do it when we fight Placidusax in this game, as he's kind of cocooned in this, I think in the past, I believe, is what I want to say, is that he's cocooned in like this little time vortex in the past. Something along those lines. I'm not entirely correct on the details there, probably. But it does make me wonder if perhaps our player character could be returning to the start of the Erdtree, or somehow perhaps we'll even be playing as a wholly new character during that time. Though that's unlikely, as fromsoftware DLCs tend to either incorporate your current character pretty well, or typically allow you to go into New Game Plus, and go about it that way. So I'm not entirely certain about that. Like, I don't necessarily personally believe that this is going to be in the past. However, I also don't think it'd be impossible, and this could, again, be a red herring, a bit of a misdirect. And perhaps this image is to just show us something we will see in the DLC, but maybe not what the DLC is about. Maybe this is part of a cutscene from the DLC. But we just don't know yet, obviously. We really can only make so many inferences based on a single image. To elaborate on that a little bit more, though, I just think that having us play around the time period of the birth of the Erdtree would kind of go against the vague, ambiguous nature of the storytelling fromsoftware is known for, and could remove some of the intrigue surrounding the Erdtree, unless the idea of this is to show that there is still a greater mystery beyond the origin of the Erdtree, which there certainly is once we bring in the Outer Gods and the Crucible into the conversation. Though, if we are getting DLC about the origin of the Golden Order and the Erdtree, it could be interesting to see how the Golden Order may not have had such bright beginnings, and may have usurped the original Outer God in Great Tree, though that again is just speculation. Perhaps there are many versions of the Lands Between, and each land we hear of in-game is just another version of the kingdom, as some are pointing to the fact that this almost looks like it could be in the Land of Reeds, but yet at the same time it still looks like it's the Lands Between, or that it could perhaps reside outside the Lands Between, because we have all the reeds that are lying in this field, and then we have graves, and we've got miquella's lilies, or I guess Trina's lilies. Miquella's lilies are in fact a little bit different than Trina's lilies. And so there are some things that would almost suggest that this is another version of the Lands Between, or that perhaps the Lands Between that we play in-game is perhaps the quote-unquote real Lands Between, and that there are various versions. I don't know if that's actually the case. That's just kind of me speculating in that regard. And as I've speculated before, perhaps it is somewhat similar to Norse cosmology in their separate realms with separate purposes. In the Lands Between could represent Asgard, and if it is the Elfen, could be representative of Helheim. And the Erdtree shines bright in what is essentially Asgard, and the Helfen Lampwood resides at the roots of the realms, with Asgard holding Yggdrasil. Though all of that in particular is very much so my own headcanon and personal speculation, I just personally think that a lot of this game is inspired by many sources of mythology, obviously, though Celtic and Norse and a lot of that really seems to be a major influence among others, and I really like to look at those influences to see how they could have played into it, and I really wouldn't be too surprised if there being different versions of the Lands Between, or there being different realms that connect, especially when you consider the fact that it's called the Lands Between. Clearly this resides between some lands, right? So it makes you wonder, though, whether or not they are physical realms or more spiritual realms or something along those lines, and I guess we won't really know until the DLC comes out, and all we can really hope for is more announcements on it, more teasers, anything. But in the meantime, though, it's just going to mostly be speculation for myself and pretty much everyone else, until we actually get some more information. So, with that, I've been Noctugal. I will see you guys in my next video, and I am desperately going to try to make sure I start uploading more often here soon. So, be on the lookout for that.